right, folks, welcome to the OKD Community Development Meeting for February 7th of the year 2023. And we have the agenda before us here. Take a look, see if there's anything you want to modify. Please add your name to the attendees section so that we know that you were here, or if you weren't here during a particular meeting, then we would know to reach out if there's something relevant to work that you're doing. So please put your name in the attendees section of the agenda, and Brian dropped a link, or someone dropped a link, Brian did, to the agenda in the chat there. So let's take a quick look. Anything that folks want to change, move around, add to the agenda? Let's add product documentation. This came up just before we started recording. All right, anything else folks want to change, move around? All right, let's jump into it. SNO installation, is that meant to be a sub item?
Yeah, I guess you can say a sub item.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so pretty much I said I'm going to try to, take all the pieces I have, put it together, and I guess have a video for you since won't be presenting to you. So try to have a video of everything stitched together. And then, because I have an actual presentation maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. So I'm going to pretend I'm presenting in front of y'all. And so y'all can critique me so I can be a little bit more brushed and polished, for the audience. And these are non-users, and basically I may be trying to talk your faculty into using it, and give them the reasons why to use it. And I mean, the policy stuff I got, but, give them that hands-on expectations. And sometimes, if they're at ground zero on Kubernetes, that you have to start there, as I have to,
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you working on this content in GitHub anywhere? Because if you share the link, then we can jump on and maybe review it before you get to do that. Maybe
That's
give you some
idea.
feedback. We can try it ourselves, see where we get stuck.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll work to put everything in GitHub, so I can have feedback, and yes, I'll do that. Yes.
Excellent. All right, so we have a deadline for that. That's good. And Tecton installation, working on that, and as you'll hear later, I'm working to get more information, attend the operator meeting to get a little more information so that we can make the installation on par with OCP. Product documentation. So I've reached out to Michael a couple times now, and just sent an email actually a couple hours ago, hoping to hear from him. I asked him if he's still participating in the OKD Working Group, and if not, if there's someone else that we should be connecting with. And then also, would it be helpful if maybe we just came up with a list of things culled from the meetings to discuss with him, and we just shot him an email with those things? Would that help this process? Just because, we do want to get the product documentation situation sort of squared away, and figure out how we can have a little more involvement or control over the process, I guess, or integration, as we discussed. So as soon as I hear something back, I will share that with the group. Email hosting. So the aliases were sent to OSPO like a week and a half ago or so, and then we got an email back that the changes were committed and that they were going to send a test email. And I'll check one more time, but as of last night, we hadn't received any test email to any of the aliases that we set up. I'll check one more time since I happen to be here. No, so I'll actually send an email at the end of this meeting to one of the aliases and track where it goes, and see sort of where we're at with that. But we're so close. It's only been a couple months, but we'll but we'll get there, for sure. Email hosting, social media. Next step is on Mastodon. Well, Miko isn't here. So we'll put that one on hold. We need more likes and retweeting of the OKD tweets. So it's just like me and like randomly one or two other people. Can folks in this meeting, if you have a Twitter account, make an effort to forward tweets, retweet the OKD tweets, or copy the content into your own social media somehow, or do something to help us build our participation in the social media grid, because it's pretty light right now and we're not getting a lot of activity. And the more visibility we get, I think the better it'll be. So just a heads up. Any thoughts on that? No? Okay. And all right, moving right along here. Operators. So like I said, I reached out on TechTown, reached out on GitOps. Elmiko isn't here to talk about Windows. Dwayne, you want to talk about operators SDK stuff you've got listed here? You're muted, my friend. Oh, you're still muted.
Hello. Oh, sorry, talking to myself. So I was up late last night. The operators meeting was like at 10 o'clock here yesterday, and I was like, oh. So I said, I'm up. I just went on, but they were cool. They talked about their process and they gave me some points. So let me just go over that real quick. They gave me this book up here on Kubernetes operator framework that they said would be good, and the operator IO docs. And they recommended that I learn Golang and knowledge of the Kubernetes certification would be great. And when you're writing, you want to have the understanding of one level down in the abstraction, they were saying. And he said we need to understand what happens when the upgrade happens, because the operator is unreachable or something like that. And we need to think about the full life cycle. And then he suggested, hey, use operator SDK. It was laughing. And then but he said they look at the KubeCon. I think that's supposed to be KubeCon. I think KubeCon Europe is going on, and so maybe some stuff up there. And then they said something about a cookbook, Cube Builder, and then at lastly he joked and said, "Well, I tried to chat GPT and it wasn't too bad." They wrote my operator. I was like, "Oh, pretty interesting." So and so I'm trying to take this stuff and put some of this in the glossary. So and then on the glossary, I was thinking, 4 priorities for newbies, some for OpenShift language, because that's always important. And then operators in the Kubernetes, that vernacular those are some good on-ramps, I think, so for people to get digestible. And then we just got to sit down and talk about what are the hooks to keep people coming, and don't overload them, and over time.
Need to unmute myself there. KubeCon EU is happening in Amsterdam, the 17th through the 21st, I think it is, of April. Yeah, and actually one of the other groups I'm affiliated with, a group of people that submitted, just found out last night that we got our talk accepted for how GitOps changed my life. So that'll be kind of interesting. I got to find my way to Amsterdam, which will be fun. So in terms of operator stuff, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I think one other thing that's important to put on this for our initiative is actually the catalog stuff on the OLM. So the operator lifecycle manager is how the operators are surfaced in the operator hub in OpenShift or OKD. So the OLM, or the operator lifecycle manager, OLM lifecycle manager, yeah. That's another piece of the operator SDK. So the actual website's the operator framework, and it's split into two parts, or actually three parts. There's the SDK, there's the OLM, and then there's also what was Operator Hub. I believe it's moving, but it's the how do you contribute an operator to the community repo. So the OLM is the important piece about wanting to create an OKD catalog. Because what you have to do is you have to package your operator in a slightly different way, which includes update graphs in terms of one version goes to another version. It includes things like channels. So if you want to have a channel for 4.11, a channel for 4.12, a channel for 4.13, it's all of that sort of stuff. And I actually think at some point we actually need to make some decisions in terms of, are we going to follow the Red Hat catalog of OCP and make the OKD catalog the same, follow the same conventions? Because that's a whole other issue or a whole other level once we look at the individual operators like the Tecton or the GitOps or the whatever other operator, the Windows or storage or so. Yeah, I think there does have to be some work done there, and I don't know how we do that with this group. We don't really have a way of actually collaborating as a community. What often happens is the Red Hatters go off internally, have a meeting, and come and present us with the results. So as a community, we haven't really got an engagement process. In terms of how we're going to collaborate. Should we set up a workshop, a brainstorming session? Should we do it via remote access to a Git repo and people just put their ideas in there and we have a discussion about it at this meeting? Or so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so how, I wonder if it'd be worthwhile to have a proof of concept, hello world, OLM compliant operator with 2 versions that you can try and install and update just to get all the pieces. Like I know that the last time I dipped into this seriously, which was now has gotten to be a couple of years ago, you know, I researched the operator framework stuff and all that, and that was, you know, great. And then I looked at Tecton and didn't use it at all at the time, and I couldn't find an existing actual operator that used that seemed to be mainly targeted towards new operators.
I think
you do find all the
pieces. On. Yeah, I think the world has moved on, and just to add extra confusion, they have recently released a new technology where instead of having a binary format, there's now a text-based format. So it's actually easier to do, but if you look at the existing operators, they're probably still on the older technology. So it's one of these technologies that's continually evolving, and unless you're staying in touch, you get up to date very quickly. The documentation is actually remarkably well. So there's a sample in there that actually helps you go through that. How you create what they call an operator bundle, which is this sort of OLM input. So that is quite helpful.
But I guess there are 2 separate threads in a way. One is if you're writing your own operator from scratch, and the other is if you are, you know, porting one of the existing operators, which I think is more our concern. You know, because like you know, like I think I've lost track of the number of people that have independently said that we need to get a lot of these Red Hat branded operators that are perceived and marketed as part of OCP so that we can deploy them on OKD. So, I mean, that's another recurring thought that I've lost track of the original authorship.
I mean, I certainly believe that's the way that we should go. I don't think we've got enough people in our community to actually go and create operators and maintain them.
Yeah.
And Red Hat is already doing that in open source and public Git repos. So where possible, I mean, one of the challenges is finding them. They seem to be spread over all sorts of multiple GitHub orgs. They're not all in one org. But I think what we want to do is we want to create a series of either pipelines, or we could use GitOps, but we want a series of automation which just takes their repos, builds the operator bundle, and then that kicks off another pipeline which goes and packages them in a catalog that we can then test and eventually release into the key.io in the OKD account.
Yeah, and that would be, I would think that the Tecton pipelines one is going to be our easiest, because really it's the operator plus an add-on, custom, and then the tasks which are in another repo, and just pulling those in. Now, that's my perspective after not really talking to folks yet on the Tecton side of things. But to me, that seems like one of our easiest candidates, right? Is to create a pipeline that literally just pulls the operator repo, pulls the configuration, and pulls the other scripts, tasks, cluster tasks, and then has that ready to go. And so that might be our first test case of like maintaining something ourselves, right? But I do like, Bruce, I do like your idea of like a hello world. The reason, and Dwayne also, for the idea of adding this documentation that you linked to, is we sort of have to understand operators to be able to support them, or even suggest to community members. And we talked about this before, like last meeting, right? Is we have to be sort of informed about them to be able to even make suggestions to the maintainers about stuff that we want and that we need. So does it make sense to set up a meeting with Vadim, since Vadim has voiced an interest in, on his own, reinvigorating the initiative for an OKD specific catalog? Should I try to set up a meeting with him that for us, like maybe an off meeting time, because he has meetings right now during this time, but maybe at some other time, and then we can all get together and sort of hash this out and try to move forward on it? Because we take a couple steps forward, but then we get other initiatives come up and we sort of lose traction and stuff. And I'd like to keep the traction going. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jamie, if you want
Mhm.
anybody to help work with you on the Tecton thing, I'm happy
Okay.
to do that. I'm sort of the closest time zone, I think, of all of us to you.
I think so, actually. All right, I'll reach out to you and let you know sort of where things are at with that. Is there anything else about operators? I'll set up a meeting, or I'll ping Vadim about setting up a meeting, and then I'll send out a calendar invite on the Google Groups list for folks to sign on, and we can try to get as many people as possible, and we'll record it as well. Does that sound good? Awesome. One other thing that I did ping Vadim about just recently, and I'm waiting to hear back, is for community to do more support of OKD in the discussion and issues. And so I've asked Vadim if he'd be willing to do us a log bundle dissection session where he just says, okay, this is where I start. When someone describes an issue that's networking, this is where I start. When someone describes an issue with, OLM or config manager, whatever it is, machine config manager, like where does he start and what is his thinking a little bit? because clearly he's one of the only people contributing to problem solving at a technical level in the issues and the discussions. We need to not have that single point of failure. And if we can distribute that knowledge enough of really understanding how to dissect and understand the log bundles, we can give other people an in to start participating in the community, because we can be like, well, here's how you can start help triage some of these things and actually learn about OKD in the process. So I'll send something out once I get confirmation from Vadim on that. That'll probably be off hours as well from the meeting, if folks are interested in attending such a thing.
I think the only caveat I would say there is you do need a fairly deep understanding of Kubernetes to start doing this, because you're going under the covers.
Yeah, it is
to do this. So you do need. It's not something we should encourage newbies that don't have a basic Kubernetes understanding, because I think that will just kill them.
Right. But we do get, I agree totally, but we do get people, matter of fact, someone reached out to me directly this past weekend. They messaged me on Slack privately about they wanted to get involved in OKD, but they didn't really know how and where, because things are so sort of isolated in the Red Hat world. And so I think we need to update the how to contribute page and link to the stuff for CentOS Stream, that initiative for building, because people can actually look at the repos and see that happening. So that's something that people could actually contribute, or at least see the, how the vegan sausage gets made. So.
Okay, and we do have a blog on that, so we can actually link them into the blog, the details in the blog in terms of the links out. Yeah. Right,
exactly. And actually, I used that blog post in the Slack channel recently. Someone asked a question; they didn't quite understand the juxtaposition between the different flavors and stuff, and I linked them to the blog post, and they were very appreciative. So that was a good thing. All right, is there anything else that we need to talk about before we break?
I guess the only other thing that's just come to mind, and I know Almiko's not here, is do we want to start looking, or does anybody have any ideas about automation? Because we started talking about automating, so when we get some news, we can put it on the website. It can go to Twitter, it can go to Mastodon, it can go into the Slack channel or the Google group. So we're not having to post 5 different separate things. Right. So I don't know whether anyone has any views on how that would work, or any technology that they use or they've played with that makes that a lot easier. I know a lot of like gaming streamers have this all set up, so they've got sort of multiple streams coming in and it all gets aggregated. I've never done anything like that, but that is something that we're going to need fairly quickly if we get this Mastodon stuff working.
Yeah. I know that he actually had some suggestions for stuff that he had researched, but I don't know of anything. Anyone else?
I don't know. Maybe I can look into Ansible and see what Ansible could do. Maybe something simple.
Well, there are some open source prepackaged solutions out there that other folks are using. So I think before we look at building something, it might be good to see what else is out there. So I think we'll know more when we talk to Almiko, when he's able to come probably at the next technical meeting next week. Anything else? Yeah, because it doesn't sound like anyone here has any experience in that area. So, all right. Well, I think we're good then for now. Let's go forth. I will try to get those some dates set up. Well, do folks have a particular calendaring survey solution that they like for like finding dates, agreeing upon dates? Is there anyone partial to? There's like 20 million different ones. So like doodle polls and all that.
I don't. I guess my only comment would be it would be good if it was morning US, which is about midday Europe, and evening as we get into sort of Middle East, Asia. Sorry, Australia, New Zealand, but no, we don't have and I think most of our community attendees are between America and the Middle East.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, we can do that. I can try to limit it to, probably at the latest 1 p.m. US time, I think, because that would put us right at like late evening, I think. At the furthest end of the spectrum. So all right. Anything else? All right, I'm gonna stop recording here.